At 5:18 on a rainy Tuesday morning, Curtis Hale stood in the narrow kitchen of his rented duplex in Columbus, Ohio. He was 41 and worked as a restaurant supply delivery driver. His first route started before sunrise, but he was still holding a black marker over the wall calendar beside the refrigerator. He needed to write down a car service appointment. There was nowhere to put it. Every square was crowded with extra delivery routes, a gym reminder, a weekend workshop, his brother's repair project, and 2 social plans he had accepted without thinking. Curtis tried to squeeze the appointment into a corner. The marker tore the thin paper. He stopped. His travel mug was empty. His lunch was not packed. Rain tapped against the kitchen window, and his work boots were still wet from the day before. Curtis looked at the calendar with a quiet feeling of defeat. His life appeared full, but he could not name one thing on that page that made him feel stronger or more secure. He left the marker on the counter and hurried outside. His van was old, and the heater took several minutes to warm up. Curtis drove through wet morning traffic toward a downtown hotel, then a diner near the university, then 3 restaurants on the west side. He was good at his job. He checked every box, remembered which kitchens needed early deliveries, and helped new employees understand their orders. When a restaurant manager was missing 1 case of glasses, Curtis stayed until the warehouse found the mistake. People trusted him because he rarely said no. That was also part of his problem. Around noon, Curtis sat in the delivery van and opened a paper bag from a drive-through restaurant. He had planned to bring lunch, but the morning had moved too fast. His younger co-worker, Marcus Lee, parked beside him and walked over. "You still comin' Thursday night?" Marcus asked. Curtis had forgotten what Thursday night was. "The supplier dinner," Marcus said. "The one at the hotel. Good place to meet people." "Oh, right," Curtis said. "Yeah, I'll be there." Marcus smiled. "That's how you move up." After Marcus left, Curtis opened the calendar on his phone. Thursday already held the dinner, a late gym class, and a note to buy shelves for the spare room. He felt tired just looking at it. That evening he reached home after 7. The spare room door would not open fully because 2 boxes were behind it. A fishing rod leaned against a folded exercise machine. A set of unused paint tools sat beneath a chair he planned to repair. Curtis had once believed every object represented a future version of himself. The fishing gear meant he would spend peaceful weekends outside. The exercise machine meant he would become disciplined. The paint tools meant he would improve the duplex. The chair meant he was the kind of man who finished what he started, but he had not gone fishing in 2 years. The machine held winter coats. The paint tools were still sealed. He heated a frozen dinner and stood beside the calendar again. Thursday's supplier dinner did not interest him. He had accepted because Marcus was going, and because important people might be there. He imagined the quiet evening he would have if he cancelled. The thought did not feel peaceful at first. It felt empty. Curtis picked up his phone and typed a message to Marcus. "I'm going to pass Thursday. I need the evening at home." He stared at the words for almost a minute before sending them. Marcus replied quickly, "Your loss, man." Curtis felt a small heat in his face, as if someone had accused him of lacking ambition. He almost changed his mind. Instead, he crossed the dinner off the wall calendar. On Thursday, Curtis drove home before dark. He stopped at a grocery store and bought chicken, rice, and green beans. He cooked the meal in one pan and washed the dishes before they became a pile. At 7:30, the evening was still open. He walked into the spare room and looked at the boxes. Then he walked back out. He wanted to create a new project so the empty time would feel useful. He thought about building the shelves. He thought about organizing every cabinet. He even considered taking an extra Friday route. But he did none of those things. He made tea and sat at the kitchen table. For the first 20 minutes, the quiet made him uncomfortable. He kept reaching for something to do. He checked the weather, read 2 work messages, and stood up twice without a reason. Then the tension slowly passed. He went to bed before 10. The next morning he woke before the alarm. His mind was not bright or perfect, but it was less crowded. He packed a lunch and arrived at the warehouse early enough to inspect his load without rushing. The change was small. It was also the first change he had felt in months. A week later, Marcus arrived at work in a new gray pickup truck. Several drivers gathered around it before their routes. Marcus talked about the monthly payment, the larger engine, and the home renovation he planned to start in the fall. Then he mentioned a weekend investment seminar. "You should come," he told Curtis. "A guy our age can't keep standing still." The word stayed with Curtis all morning. A guy our age. Curtis thought about Marcus's truck while unloading cookware at a family restaurant. He thought about the worn seats in his own van. He thought about the duplex, the crowded spare room, and the storage unit across town that he had paid for during the past 3 years. By lunch, he felt behind again. When the dispatcher asked whether anyone could take 2 extra routes that week, Curtis raised his hand. When Marcus sent the seminar link, Curtis paid the registration fee. When his brother Owen called and asked for help repairing a loose section of fence on Sunday, Curtis agreed without checking anything. For a few hours, the decisions felt good. His week had movement again. He was earning more, learning more, and helping someone. He felt important. By Friday, the feeling was gone. Curtis had slept less than 6 hours each night. He ate lunch in the van while driving between stops. At a restaurant near the airport, an employee asked him to wait while she checked a delivery number. Curtis looked at the clock. "I don't have all day," he said. The woman became quiet. She found the number and signed the form without looking at him. Back in the van, Curtis felt ashamed. She had not caused his schedule. She had only needed 2 minutes. That night, he missed the gym class he had already paid for. He also forgot to buy the fence screws Owen needed for Sunday. The seminar started Saturday morning in a hotel meeting room. Curtis sat under bright lights while a speaker talked about growth, ownership, and building a bigger future. The speaker was energetic. The people around Curtis took notes. Curtis tried to listen, but his mind moved from the extra routes to Owen's fence, from the fence to his car appointment, from the appointment to the storage bill that had charged his card that morning. He left during the lunch break. In the parking lot, he sat inside his van and looked at the receipt for the seminar. He had spent money and given up half a Saturday because he was afraid someone else was moving faster. The old habit had not been only busyness, it had been comparison. On Sunday evening, after helping Owen finish the fence, Curtis returned home tired and dirty. He stood in front of the wall calendar. He looked at the crowded notes and crossed out plans. Then he wrote 1 sentence across a blank strip at the bottom. "Before I add something, What will it replace? Curtis read it twice. The rule was not about refusing everything. It was about seeing the cost before saying yes. The next Saturday, he drove to the storage facility on the north side of Columbus. The unit smelled like dust, cardboard, and cold metal. Inside were old camping supplies, a small table saw, plastic bins of clothes, a bicycle with flat tires, and boxes from the apartment he had left 5 years earlier. Curtis had told himself the unit gave him options. Mostly it gave him a monthly bill and a place to delay decisions. He opened the first box. There were kitchen items he had not used, books he did not remember buying, and a lamp with a broken switch. He made 3 areas on the concrete floor: keep, sell, and donate. After 2 hours, the keep area was the largest. Curtis noticed what he was doing. He was trying to protect every possible future. Maybe he would camp again. Maybe he would repair furniture. Maybe he would need 6 winter jackets. Maybe the old lamp could be useful. He looked at the rule he had written on a card and placed in his wallet. If he kept paying for the unit, what would the payment replace? It replaced part of his grocery money. It replaced car maintenance. It replaced the small savings he said he wanted. Curtis kept his father's tool chest, basic camping gear, and 1 box of family photographs. He sold the table saw and bicycle. He donated clothes, dishes, and several unopened items. He did not finish in 1 day. For 4 Saturdays he returned. Each visit became harder in a different way. The first day was about objects. The second was about money. The third was about the man he thought he should become. On the 4th Saturday, the unit was almost empty. The manager handed him a cancellation form. "You sure?" she asked. "People usually need storage again." Curtis looked at the bare concrete floor. "I might," he said, "but I don't need this one now." He signed the form. The next week, Curtis became too protective of his new empty space. A new driver named Eli joined the delivery team. Eli was careful but slow, and he did not know which restaurant entrances were difficult before lunch. The supervisor, Gloria Bennett, asked Curtis to ride with him for 1 afternoon. Curtis looked at his calendar. Tuesday evening was blank. He had planned to go home, make dinner, and rest. "I can't," he said quickly. "I've got plans." Gloria nodded and asked another driver. The other driver rushed through the training. 2 days later, Eli parked at the wrong loading entrance downtown and blocked a service lane. The restaurant complained, and the dispatcher had to change 3 routes. Curtis watched Eli return to the warehouse with a red face. "No one told me about that entrance," Eli said quietly. Curtis knew he had not caused the whole problem. Still, he felt the difference between protecting peace and protecting comfort. His rule did not mean every empty hour was more important than every person. It meant he had to choose honestly. The next morning, Curtis spoke to Gloria. "I answered too fast," he said. "I can ride with Eli Wednesday. I'll move my grocery trip to Thursday." Gloria studied him for a moment. That would help. On Wednesday, Curtis showed Eli the difficult entrances, the best loading times, and the restaurants that checked every box twice. The afternoon ended later than usual, but Curtis did not feel used. He had chosen what the time would replace. That mattered. Over the next month, his life became simpler in quiet ways. The storage payments stopped. He packed lunch more often. He left 1 or 2 evenings open each week. He kept useful objects and gave away things that only carried guilt. He still worked hard. He still helped Owen. He still accepted overtime sometimes, but he began checking the real cost first. Then his car gave him the test he had been avoiding. One Tuesday morning, the temperature gauge rose while he was driving to the warehouse. Curtis pulled into a gas station and shut off the engine. A repair shop found a serious leak in the cooling system. The mechanic showed him the estimate. The number was large enough to remove most of the small financial cushion Curtis had built. He sat in the shop waiting area with the paper in his hands. For a few minutes, the old fear returned. He should have earned more. He should have taken every extra route. He should have bought a newer car. He should have become a supervisor years ago. That afternoon, Gloria called him into her office. "I have something that may interest you," she said. The company needed a temporary route coordinator for 8 weeks. The job paid more and could lead to a permanent promotion. Curtis felt hope before Gloria finished explaining. Then she described the schedule. The coordinator had to answer driver calls at night, solve weekend problems, and remain available when deliveries failed. Most Saturdays would be work days. Some evenings would end after 10. "You know the routes better than anyone," Gloria said. "I think you'd be good at it." Curtis thought about the repair estimate in his pocket. The extra pay could cover it quickly. The title would sound better than delivery driver. Marcus would respect it. Maybe everyone would see that Curtis was not standing still. "When do you need an answer?" he asked. "Tomorrow morning." The old Curtis would have said yes before leaving the office. Instead, he said, "I need tonight to look at it." At home, he placed the proposed schedule on the kitchen table. The wall calendar hung beside him. Curtis began marking the 8 weeks. Night calls, Saturday coverage, emergency changes, extra meetings. Almost every open space disappeared. He asked the question at the bottom of the calendar. What would this replace? It would replace sleep. It would replace the car appointments he had delayed too long. It would replace simple meals, quiet evenings, and the time he had chosen to give Owen. It would replace the new driver training he enjoyed because the coordinator would be too busy solving emergencies. Most of all, it would replace the clear mind he had only recently begun to trust. Curtis did not dislike responsibility. He did not fear hard work. But this opportunity asked for control of nearly every part of his life. He looked at the repair estimate again. Then he opened a folder and added the numbers. Money from selling the table saw and bicycle. Savings from ending the storage payment. The cushion he had built. One fixed overtime route each week for several weeks. He could pay for the repair without taking the position. His savings would become small. He would have to delay buying the newer television he had wanted for the living room. The solution was not exciting. It was enough. The next morning, Curtis returned to Gloria's office. "I appreciate the offer," he said, "but I'm going to pass on the coordinator position." Gloria leaned back. "Are you sure? It could lead somewhere." "I know," Curtis said, "but the schedule would take more than I'm willing to give right now." He paused. "I can take the Wednesday overtime route for the next 6 weeks, a fixed route, no night calls." Gloria was quiet for a few seconds. Curtis felt the cost of the decision. She might see him as less ambitious. The promotion might not come again. Then Gloria nodded. "That's clear," she said. "I can work with clear." Curtis left the office without feeling proud or defeated. He felt steady. The repair used most of his cushion. He drove the same old car home 3 days later. The seats were still worn, and the radio still lost one station near the river, but the temperature gauge stayed in the right place. On Wednesday evenings, Curtis took the extra route. On the other nights, he went home. Marcus asked why he had turned down the coordinator job. "That was your chance," he said. "It was a chance," Curtis replied. "It just wasn't the right cost." Marcus shook his head, but Curtis did not argue. He no longer needed Marcus to understand. Several weeks later, rain touched the kitchen window on a Saturday morning. Curtis sat at the table with coffee. A simple lunch was ready in the refrigerator for Monday. The repaired car was parked outside. The duplex was not perfect. 2 boxes still sat in the spare room. Work would be busy the following week. His savings needed time to grow again. His phone lit up with a message from Marcus. A few people were planning a weekend event. Marcus wanted an answer. Curtis stood and walked to the wall calendar. He added a necessary car check for the end of the month. Then he looked at the weekend Marcus had mentioned. The square was blank. Once that empty space would have made him nervous. He would have filled it quickly so he would not feel behind, lonely, or unimportant. Now he left the message unanswered for the moment. He would decide after he knew what the event would replace. Curtis looked at the calendar. There were work shifts, 1 dinner with Owen, the car appointment, and several open spaces. The page no longer looked empty. It looked honest. Simple living had not removed every problem from Curtis's life. It had taught his mind where to stand.